The people who live in the rainforest have developed their own customs, languages, and skills. Just like you, they enjoy good food and playing games with their friends. They like to laugh, sing, dance, work, and rest. Many different peoples live in the world's rainforests. In some ways they are alike, and in other ways they are very different. Some have tribal names such as the Orangulu, the Nambaquara, Zoro, Havayo, Kraho, Tarabona, Dayak, and Kuku. Others are families who live and work in the rainforest. Tropical rainforests grow near the equator. That's an imaginary line around the middle of the Earth, between the North and South Poles. Rainforests can be found in Southeast Asia, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, and Africa. They are home to an estimated 50 million people. This is where Reseco, Chanta palms, and giant ajo trees as tall as buildings tower over your head, and the weather is warm and wet all year round. Thick green vines hang like ropes linking the trees together, creating a highway across the forest for the monkeys who live there. Feathery ferns and broad palm leaves fan out from the ground, and dry leaves carpet the forest floor. All around this lush garden, which has been around for millions of years, animals and insects breathe, eat, and move. A three-toed sloth climbs a cecropia tree in search of leaves to eat, and a snake quietly slithers across the ground. Costa Rica means rich coast in Spanish and is located in Central America. A peninsula is a piece of land that juts out from the mainland and is surrounded on three sides by water. The Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica is where you'll find the last stretch of coastal rainforest in Central America. 500 types of trees and over 550 kinds of birds, reptiles, and fish live in and around this forest, along with many people. The Sanchez family lives here. Like his father and grandfather before him, Miguel Sanchez is a farmer who gets almost everything he needs for survival from his environment. The family lives in this house on the Piro Reserve. A reserve is a piece of rainforest where people protect the animals and plants by letting them grow and live without being harmed or bothered by chainsaws or bulldozers. Reserves are important because rainforests all over the world are being cut down and destroyed forever by loggers, miners, and road builders. As in most rainforest neighborhoods, there are no schools here in the Piro Reserve. Kids learn about how to survive in the forest from their parents and grandparents. The older Sanchez kids spend part of the week with their grandmother, who lives in the mountains, where they can go to school. They come back home on weekends to help their mother and father work on the farm and care for the forest. Miguel cuts coconuts from the palm trees with his machete, a broad, heavy knife that's used as a tool and weapon which he always carries with him. Coconuts are carried in the family's ox cart and fed to the pigs. The boys learn how to build a house and care for the animals from their father, and the girls help with the chores around the farm. Miguel makes his own cheese from cow's milk. On the Piro Reserve, neighbors live far away from each other. The houses are connected by footpaths that run through the forest. Since there are no telephones, the Sanchez family talks to their neighbors with a radio. They use solar energy for lights to run their television set. Solar panels are built on the roof of their house. They soak up the sun's energy and produce electricity. This is another way the Sanchez family uses what's in their environment to make their home more comfortable. Malaysia, a country in Southeast Asia, used to have thick rainforests covering the land. The rainforests here are disappearing at the alarming rate of about 5 square miles per day. If they continue to be destroyed this quickly, there won't be any left in 50 years. The Orangulu people live here in Malaysia on the Ando Rampan Reserve, another protected piece of rainforest land. They have always lived here and call their village Kampung Peta. Twice a year, monsoons, great winds, move back and forth over Malaysia. During the monsoon seasons, rain fills the rivers, sometimes spilling over their banks. In the Kampung Peta village, the Orangulu people are ready for the heavy rain. Their houses are built on 6-foot-high wooden stilts. The stilts keep the houses dry when the river floods and keep wild animals out all year round. On hot days, kids play in the river and mothers bathe their children. Men travel by boat on the calm green waters and catch fish using fish baskets that are made of rattan, another plant that grows in the nearby rainforest. Everybody tries to work early in the morning before the sun gets too hot. In Kampung Peta, Lantun's work is to cut rattan from the forest to sell. Before he enters, he asks Penaguatan, a spirit who guards the rainforest, for permission. It is a sign of respect. The country of Papua New Guinea is located in Southeast Asia. The various groups of people here speak more than 800 different languages and have many of their own traditions, which are skills, beliefs, and art that have been passed down by a group of people for a very long time. The Mayasan people who live in Papua New Guinea are known for their fine tapa cloths, which are made from the bark of wawusi, or mulberry trees. Tapa cloth is used to make wall hangings and tablecloths to sell to tourists. It is also used to make traditional clothing that is worn in festivals. Making tapa cloth is an art Mayasan daughters learned from their mothers and grandmothers. Gently, they peel away the white inner bark of a mulberry tree until the whole strip comes off. To soften and spread out the bark, they pound it with mallets made from palm wood until it is the right size and thickness. Mayasan women decorate the tapa cloth with red and black dye that they make from boiled creeper vine leaves, charcoal, clay, bark, and water. With steady hands, some women paint designs known only by their family. Others paint plants, insects, and designs they've seen come to life in their dreams. When a tapa cloth is finished, it feels soft, crinkly, and shows bold black and red patterns. Often, instead of going to a store, people get the plants, wood, food, and medicine they need from the rainforest. It's important to them to preserve the rainforest so that it will continue to provide them with the things they need for years and years to come. Hats don't grow on trees, but you can use the leaves from the Panama hat plant to make one, the way Miguel is weaving this one. Hats are useful in Costa Rica to keep the sun out of people's eyes. This puffy-looking fiber is called balsa fluff, which is used to stuff pillows and mattresses. The fluff comes from the seed pods of balsa trees. Balsa wood is lightweight. It is also used to make models and glider planes. Maybe you have flown one in a park. These small fruits are called achotillo. When the Sanchez family gets cuts and scrapes, they use the oil from this fruit as a medicine which they rub into wounds to help prevent infections. They also use plants to cure snake bites and stomach aches. When you drink the milk from this vaco tree, your stomach ache will go away. In fact, many medicines you find in drugstores like aspirin and cough drops originally came from plants that grow in the rainforest. These plants are used to make medicines to treat diseases like high blood pressure, cancer, and malaria. the only place on Earth where these plants grow is the rainforest. Brazil, the largest country in South America, holds most of the Amazon rainforest, the largest in the world. This vast ecosystem stretches across South America and covers over 5 million square kilometers, or 2 million square miles. Here, the Amazon River pours out billions of gallons of water every year into the Atlantic Ocean, more than any other river on Earth. People depend on the Amazon River for fish, and they also use it as a highway for boats to journey to villages throughout the area. Many of the tribal people who have always lived here, like the Waiapi, are wise in the ways and uses of palm trees. They use them to make their tools, food, and homes. If you lived here, you'd learn the many uses of palm trees too. In the Brazilian Amazon, many houses are built from palm, grass, and local wood. They have thatch roofs woven from palm leaves to keep off the rain. Some homes are made of just a roof and 2 walls. The Namaquara people of Brazil do not waste any of the cassava root they find in the forest. It is made into flour, porridge, drinks, spice, baby food, and bread, and served at every meal. Cassava root is grown in gardens where the roots lie on the ground like buried treasures. The girls and their mothers spend the day digging them up and turning the poisonous root into delicious, energy-filled food. While they joke and tell stories, they cut and grate cassava root. They soak it, boil it, and then carefully squeeze out the milky poison, which is saved and used on the end of arrows when the men in the village go hunting. If you've ever had tapioca pudding, then you've tasted cassava root. The Zoro people also live in the Brazilian Amazon. Zoro boys and their fathers hunt for meat in the rainforest. The only fast food you'll find here is what's leaping, flying, running, or swimming away from you. From their fathers, uncles, and brothers, the boys have learned how to quietly hunt with the bows and arrows they make from palms, grasses, bamboo, and bone. You won't find any refrigerators here. Food rots quickly because of the warm, humid climate. Hunters catch only what they can use for the next few days. And the Zoro smoke or dry the meat to preserve it so that it will last. Under the shade of their thatch roofs, the Zoro relax in homemade hammocks. Each string was woven by hand from the bark of Brazil nut trees. Kids in the Amazon use hammocks because they're fun to swing in. Zoro people use Brazil nut bark to spice their food and to make strings so they can climb trees. The seed pods or shells can be used for pipes. The seeds inside the shells, or Brazil nuts, can be eaten. Maybe you've already had a taste of Brazil nuts. Many of the people who live in the rainforest also want to earn money to buy other things they need. But they also show their respect and appreciation for the forest by carefully taking only what they need without damaging other plant and animal life. The trees near Miguel's home in Costa Rica have taken hundreds of years to grow this tall. Miguel's brothers and oldest son look for trees that have been struck by lightning or have fallen down naturally from old age. They want to preserve the trees that their neighbors, the red monkeys, and the three-toed sloth, also call home. The fallen trees are cut into square blocks and attached to oxen who drag the wood out of the forest to the mill, where the wood is cut into thin planks and stored in a shed for a month or longer to dry. Later, the lumber is sold to other people in the neighborhood to use for building and making furniture. The country of Indonesia, which is in Southeast Asia, is an archipelago, which means a group of islands. Indonesia has over 13,000 islands scattered near the equator. The Asmat people who live here make poles, shields, and mighty drums together in this house. Some are sold to tourists, and the rest are used in ceremony. The shields are named after Asmat ancestors, people who lived before them, and the ancestors are carved onto the top of the shields to protect the warriors during battles. Only the most talented carvers can carve tall magic shields called jamsh. Using iron chisels, they carve birds, worms, and fish bellies into the wood. Shields are made from tree buttresses, the sturdy roots that help some trees stand. Osmot drums are made from local wood, lizard skin, and beeswax. Drums are special to the Osmot people because they believe that their god carved the first people out of trees and brought them to life by drumming. The Dayak people also live here in Indonesia. Many families live together in this long house. Dayak families weave strong baskets from the spiky rattan plants that grow nearby. They sell some and keep the rest to carry things with. Making rattan baskets takes time, energy, and skill. Rattan has to be pulled down from trees and cut. Dayak families remove the long spikes and peel and shave the rattan into fine strands. They weave the rattan strands into deep baskets by weaving 2 strings between wider rattan strips. Dayak families decorate their baskets by dyeing rattan with black paint made from boiled leaves, water, and dirt. Mothers, daughters, and sons patiently weave black triangles, diamonds, and zigzag patterns into the baskets. They have made and decorated baskets this way for many, many years. When the work is over, people in the world's tropical rainforest make time to play and enjoy themselves. They hold ceremonies like weddings to celebrate important events in their lives. They also hold festivals and celebrations, special gatherings with dances, games, songs, and art. At these events, people share their unique traditions and show pride in who they are. In Brazil, the Crajo and the Gavaio people hold a festival. The Gavaio and Crajo women wrap meat in banana leaves for the feast, while the men practice archery. Later, the girls and boys have a relay race for fun. Everyone divides into 2 teams, the macaws and the hawks, and they pass decorated logs from one person to another. To prepare for the race, both teams paint their bodies with vegetable paint. Red for the macaws, black for the hawks. The way football teams have different uniforms in North America. They light a bonfire in the center of the village and the music begins. Girls and boys decorate themselves with red, white, and black paint. They wear a coat of feathers and sing songs. A rattle made from a dried gourd shakes. The Gavaio teach the Crajo words to their old, proud songs. Boys with their hair cut especially for the festival play flutes. Girls dance, performing the same steps their grandmothers did. The Karafi people live on the coast of Papua New Guinea. For 2 years, the Karafi men stopped fishing to give the fish a chance to breed so that there would be more fish to catch. On this sunny day, they hold a ceremony to invite the fish to come back to their reefs. Then the men can begin to fish again. For the ceremony, the women prepare special treats called sago, which are like small white cakes soaked in coconut milk. Sago is made of starchy flour that the men get from the pulp of a sago palm. By the ocean, an elder sprinkles a mixture of herbs and water on a live fish. He tells the fish that there will be a party tomorrow and that she should invite her friends. The chief of the village returns the fish to the ocean. Now that the Karafi fishermen have shown their respect to the ocean, they can once again catch the shimmery Napoleon fish, lobsters, and oysters to eat. The Tarrabona people live in the highlands or mountains of Papua New Guinea. Terrebonne weddings are colorful, lively celebrations where the bride, groom, and their families spend 2 days giving gifts, feasting, dancing, and making music. The bride and groom are all dressed up in scarlet, gold, and brown feather headdresses, shell necklaces, furs, and flowers. Families wear their finest traditional Terrebonne clothes. Kids play with their wooden cars while both families meet to give gifts. It is the most important part of the wedding. The man's family gives the woman's family quina shells. Quina shells are rare and valuable in the highlands, and the Terrebonne people use them to trade for things they need. Everyone has fun preparing the wedding feast. Bamboo flutes are played, and a parade of people carry logs to the roasting pit. The smoky smell of pork and roasted yams fills the air. Later, another parade leads the bride and groom's families singing and dancing to the place where they will share the food. In the evening, both families gather in a small house to sing love songs in honor of the bride and groom. The music, songs, and dances flow into the rhythm of the rainforest, pulsing with life. The people continue to celebrate their traditions and the beauty of life in the rainforest. They try to maintain their way of life, but know that soon they may have to fight to keep their homes from being destroyed around them. The widespread destruction of tropical rainforests has been described as one of the world's worst ecological disasters. Half of them are already gone forever. They have been cut and burned to the ground in order to sell the trees for money and make way for cattle ranches. If this continues at the rate it's going today, they will all disappear within your lifetime, destroying people's homes, food, medicines for the future, and many plants and animals that haven't even been discovered yet. The rainforests are also important to us simply because they are so beautiful. All living things need clean air, good food, pure water, and to be connected with nature. We need the treasures of nature to nurture us, give us places to rest, to look, and to wonder. Places that tell us we are not alone, that we are part of the earth, and the earth is part of us. For more information about tropical rainforests, contact one of the many organizations working to stop the destruction to see what you can do.